This is lesson 2.3 out of the Introduction to Algebra Introduction to Algebra book. Lesson 2.3 is titled Evaluating. Remember, we learned in lesson 2.2 evaluating is plugging in values where you see variables and then solving the problem. So this is evaluating geometric formulas. And geometric formulas are simply those formulas we use to find things like perimeter, area, and volume of different kinds of shapes. Okay, and now we'll just be using those kinds of formulas and evaluating them in the same process that we used in lesson 2.2. So if you're not sure what I mean when I say evaluating, you should go back and look at 2.2. That'll be important for this lesson. All right, so warm-ups. Warm-ups for this lesson is evaluate each expression. Evaluate each expression. Number 1, 2x minus 5 when x equals 11. So plug it in, do the math. Next one is b over 6 plus 1 when b equals 18. And number 3 is 2 times L plus 2 times W when L equals 5 and W equals 3. All right? Solve those out. I'll skip one line and put in our I can statement. And so the objective for this lesson is oops, hold on. I put that a little too close. There we go. All right, here we go. Let's try again. All right. I can use geometric formulas to find area, perimeter, and volume. Okay, so that's the warm-up portion. Let's go ahead and draw our dark green line and move into notes. All right, so I only have one little notes sheet to put in here today, and it's going to go right up there in the usual upper left corner. All right, vocab, press down. Okay, yellow highlighter. This is the new vocabulary. Some of it's new, some of it actually really isn't. But we're talking about formulas. Formulas. They're an algebraic equation that shows the relationship among specific quantities. All right, that sounds really complicated in all those words, but we'll break it down into something pretty darn easy. All right, so good to know. Geometric formulas are used to evaluate quantities such as perimeter, area, and volume. Now, some of these I know you are already familiar with. We have already worked with perimeter and area for a triangle and for a rectangle. We have also worked with volume in cubes and different kinds of rectangular prisms, correct? Volume equals length times width times height. We already know that, right? So in my notes here, they're going to be relatively short because the examples I'm going to give are just for finding volume and area for the circle because we haven't talked about that yet. And then we'll also talk about using, before we haven't had a formula for finding the perimeter of a rectangle, and now we have one. You know, before we just added up all the sides, or if it was a square we might have taken one side and multiplied it by 4, but now we have a formula, so we'll have to write the formula, plug in the known values, and do the math, and we'll do that part as well. But finding area and perimeter, finding area of triangles and rectangles is not something I'm going to put into these notes, and that includes finding volume of something like that. You guys know how to do that. You can look back to block 6 of your decimals and fractions book to find lessons on how to do that if you're not up to date with that. All right, so let's highlight these formulas. These formulas need to get added into the back of your book if you haven't done that yet. Your volume should already be there. Here's our formula for finding the surface area of a solid. Area of a triangle, area and perimeter of a rectangle, area and circumference, which is kind of another way of saying the perimeter of a circle. We don't say perimeter of a circle, though. We call it the circumference. And that's your formula for that. Okay? All right, so how do we use these? Well, pretty much the same way you've already been taught to use the other ones we have used back in block 6 of the last book. So, evaluating geometric, that means formulas for shapes, okay? Geometric formulas. And I think I'm going to highlight that yellow because I'm going to put down some actual steps. And these are steps we've gone over before when we were doing area and volume of rectangles and triangles. Okay, so these should look real familiar to you. So, step 1. I should hear my whole class right now saying, write the formula. Yes, step 1 is always write the formula. Step 2. Again, I should hear my whole class out there saying, plug in known values. We say it over and over again. Plug in known values. And then the third step is solve using order of operations, and I'm just going to say PEMDAS to kind of make that a little shorter. Solve using PEMDAS, order of operations. All right? So those are our steps for what we'll be doing with these new formulas we're going to find. Okay? All right, so find the perimeter of a rectangle. Now, like I said, I know you guys already know how to find a perimeter by just adding up all the sides. But now we're going to get a little bit more sophisticated and use a formula to do that, not just adding up all the sides. I shouldn't have put a period there yet because I need to give you some values. Come on, go away. There you go. Find the perimeter of a rectangle when length equals 7, that's your L, and width equals 4. Okay, that's your W. All right. So, what is the formula for perimeter of a rectangle? Well, first I'm going to take my blue one. What are we doing here? We're doing perimeter of a rectangle. Okay. All right. So, my formula for the perimeter of a rectangle is P equals 2L plus 2W. And that should make sense, because if I'm finding the perimeter of a rectangle, I need 2 of the lengths and 2 of the widths. And I add those together, correct? That's how we get this formula. So that's my step 1, writing the formula. Okay. Now, step 2 is going to be plugging in the known values. I have 2 and let's see, length is 7. So plug in the known values of 7. All right. Plus 2 times W, and it's telling me that W is equal to 4. So I'll plug that in. Okay. That's step 2, plug in known values. Now step 3 is do the math, right? Okay, I have to do the multiplying before I can do the adding. So 2 times 7 is, 2 times 7 is 14, plus 2 times 4 is 8, right? And I'm still solving because I don't have a final answer yet. And 14 plus 8 is what? 22. Okay. Now, you know that we should always have labels on these. And sometimes in these problems, they won't tell you whether we're dealing in inches, centimeters, feet, etc. Okay. If they don't, then the label is always units. And, oops, that was messy. Sorry, just a second. Units. And you can write out units, or you can simply just abbreviate it with U period. And then remember to think, is it squared or cubed or just units alone? Well, this is perimeter, so it's just units alone. So my final answer for the perimeter of a rectangle when the length is 7 and the width is 4, using this formula, is 22 units. And this area here is my step 3, solving using PEMDAS. All right? That's how we do that. All right? Okay, so I'm going to write a quick little note here about this units that I just discussed. All right? So if they don't, got to write nice and small, if they don't tell you what your measure is, for example, inches, centimeters, feet. If they don't tell you, use units, which can be abbreviated with just a U. All right? So I'm going to take my red pencil and write. There we go. That'll happen on your worksheet a lot. They'll just tell you to evaluate a particular formula with given values, and they won't tell you what it's being measured in. So that's what you do. You still have to have some kind of a label on it. So we just say simply units when we don't know what it is. All right, so now let's take a look at the circle. This one will be new to most of you, and see how those are done. All right, so we are going to find the area and the circumference of a circle when R equals 3 inches, and then use 3.14 for pi. All right, so this is going to be a little bit new to some of you, so let's talk about it for a second. All right, now I'm going to highlight first. What are we doing? We're doing area and circumference of a circle. All right. Okay, so when we are dealing with the formulas for a circle, they're going to look a little odd to you guys because they're going to have some symbols in them you might not be familiar with. But let's look at area first. That would be our step 1. And the formula for area of a circle is area equals pi times r squared. Oh my gosh, what do you do with that? All right. Okay, so pi is a measurement. It's a very special number that is 3.14, and then many more digits past that never repeat into infinity. And so, we can talk about pi at another time. It's actually quite a lot of fun to get into. But because of the way that it continues and never stops, we round it and use the number 3.14 or 3 14/100ths as our stand-in for pi. All right? Now, R stands for radius. And radius, I'm going to write that right up here. Radius is the measurement for the very center of any circle out to its edge. That's the measurement for that. So to find the area of a circle, we multiply pi, 3.14, times the radius squared. So don't get all crazy nuts so that you don't recognize what these symbols are. The steps are still the same. We plug in the values they're giving us for our variables. And in the same order that we did before. All right. So, what do we plug in for pi? They tell us to use 3.14 plugged in. Okay. Then what do we plug in for r? They tell us r radius is 3 inches. So we're going to put that in parentheses here because this with no operations in between the pi and the r squared. That means these are being multiplied. So 3 goes into parentheses, and then don't forget to bring down that 2, that squared. This is pi r squared. All right? So that's our step 2, plugging in all the known values. Now we have to do the math, right? And my order of operations tells me that I have to take care of exponents first, correct? So I'll just carry down this 3.14. And 3 times 3, 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. And now I can multiply 3.14 times 9, and you'll have to do some scratching out on the side for that. I already did that. So I'll tell you that it is 28 and 26/100ths. And we're doing area, so what is area? Area is squared. They told us that the radius is 3 inches, so we're dealing in inches squared, correct? There's our final answer on that. Oh no, I was out of frame. Sorry guys. Here you go. That's how we do that. Okay? So that's area. I know it looks kind of foreign to you as you get started, but we use these formulas a lot, so you'll get used to it quickly. Okay, that was our step 3, solving it. All right? Okay, so now let's look at how we would find the circumference, which is, kind of the equivalent of perimeter, but we don't say perimeter with circles. So we're going to find the circumference. And the formula for that is C equals, C standing for circumference, C equals 2 pi r. Okay, C equals 2 times pi times r. All right, so first step is to plug in known values. Put a 1 here. First step is to write the formula. Second step is to plug in known values. So what are our known values here? Well, we have a 2, so carry it down. We know that we are going to represent pi with 3.14, 3 14/100ths, and we know that r is 3 inches. So 3, right? Okay, now it's time to do the math. And the first thing I would do is just bring down that whole number and take care of these first. So 3 and 1400ths times 3 is 9 and 42 hundredths. Okay. Now we have to multiply the 2 times the 9 and 42 hundredths to get our final answer. And that is 18 and 84 hundredths. Just like with perimeter, circumference is one continual measurement. So it is not squared, it is not cubed, it'll simply be inches. This is our step 3, doing the math, right? So that's the answer to that, okay? Now, in your worksheet, worksheet that you have with this, you will also be asked to do problems involving finding area and perimeter and volume of rectangles and triangles. I did not put this in the notes, as I said at the beginning, because we've done that all before. So again, refer back to block 6 in the last book if you're not sure how to do those. But you should all be very familiar with that by the time we get to this lesson here. Okay? All right, so that's the end of notes. Let's take a look at some practice problems. Okay, so practice problems for lesson 2.3. There's just 3 of them. Okay, one of each flavor here. You're going to evaluate using each of the formulas below. We have the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle, the formula for the area of a circle, and the formula for the circumference of the circle. And you'll need to use those formulas as you solve these, all right? So those are the formulas there. And problem number 1 is find the perimeter of a rectangle when length equals 11 and width equals 3. And the other 2 are our circle ones, finding the area of a circle and the circumference of a circle. So I'll go back up and give you a chance to pause. Okay, pause there. Okay, let's see how we work these out. Step by step. Step 1 is always to write the formula. So for the perimeter of a rectangle, the formula is P equals 2L plus 2W. Our next step is to plug in known values. Well, I have 2 times length is 11, it says here, and plus 2 times the width is 3. Now I do the math. 2 times 11 is 22. 2 times 3 is 6. 22 plus 6 is 28. And it doesn't tell me what I'm measuring in. This is perimeter, so it's not going to be squared or cubed. So I'm just going to use units, abbreviated. So the perimeter of a rectangle with the length of 11 and a width of 3 is 28 units. All right? Okay, now, circles. Area of a circle when R is 5 centimeters, and use 3.14 for pi, of course. So the first step is to write the formula. The formula for the area of a circle is A equals pi R squared. I'm going to plug in 3.14 for pi, so 3 and 14 hundredths times. My radius of this circle is 5 centimeters, and bring down the squared. Okay. My order of operations tells me I have to take care of that exponent first. Oops, why did I write a 5 there? Because I was looking at the 5 up in the parentheses. Come on. There we go. 3.14 times, it's squared, so 5 times 5 is 25. Okay. Now I have to figure out what 3 and 14 hundredths times 25 is. You'd have to scratch that out as a multiplication problem, but I already did that, so I'll tell you that it is 78 and 5/10. And this is area, and they told us we're measuring in centimeters, so it's centimeters squared. So the area of this particular circle is 78 and 5/10 centimeters squared. All right, now we're working on the circumference of this circle. Oh, it's a different circle. It has a radius of 10. All right, step 1 is to write the formula. The formula for the circumference of a circle is C equals 2 pi r. Okay, bring down the 2 and plug in 3.14 or 3 1400ths for pi, and plug in 10 for our radius. Bring down that 2 and multiply these first. So this is easy, just move the decimal because we're multiplying by 10. But 3.14 times 10 is 31 4/10. Now we multiply the 2 times 31 4/10, and you get 62 8/10 inches. They told us that the radius is 10 inches, so we're measuring in inches, and circumference, just like perimeter, isn't squared, isn't cubed, it's just inches. All right, so that is our answer on that one. All right, that's how those are worked. Okay, now you will have on your worksheet other problems as well, as I've said already. I'm not giving examples of those because we've worked those kind out. Just remember that you need to use the steps. So they give you the formulas that you need at the top of the worksheet, and then you're going to be working out on problems 1 through 5. You'll be using those formulas and working them out. If you write really small, you might be able to do them out here in the margin. There's not enough room under here, but kind of out here to the sides. If you are going to have problems with that, you might want to do these on a different sheet of paper. Notice also that all of these values they give you, they don't tell you what the units are. They don't tell you centimeters, inches. So then your units are simply U. So don't forget, you still have to label it with U or U squared or U cubed, depending on what kind of a problem you're doing. All right. Now, this one down here is the finding the volume of this prism. You guys, I know you already know how to do that. And then finding the surface area. When you're finding the surface area, I know this looks like a crazy formula, but it's the same steps, okay? You're just going to multiply whatever they tell you for length and width, then add that to whatever they tell you for width and height, multiply them, and so on and so on. So you'll just need to take it one step at a time, using your notes for the order in which we do things. All right, so that's your worksheet for lesson 2.3. That gets us to your exit ticket. Exit ticket is for extra practice. I don't give you the answers. You may talk to your teacher about that. And so that ends our lesson 2.3 out of the Introduction to Algebra book. Remember, the only way to learn math is to do math, and mistakes are proof that you're learning.